So what we know about the electrics here is that they're really bad. So there's the cable you can see going up, that's the feed for the whole entire house. That's the little skinny wire. The other skinny little wire goes up and in the wall to this, which has one going off to the light in this room. Then it must go in the wall, and as you can see there's a junction box here in the corner, right there, and then there's another junction box over here. So outside that one is a light, and then obviously that goes down to the summer kitchen, and on the outside we've got our internal light switch. I thought, and it appears that here these two pipes hanging out are the power cable. This goes, green one that goes up, goes to the plug socket above the bedroom door, and the other cable, which appears to have something in relation to a socket, and then as you can see wires inside. So if I go around the other side, as you can see, you've got these wires here that don't make any sense at all. They just go into that wall there. There's no reason, rhyme or anything of why they would be there. This is brick. And then you've got this black cable where all the cobwebs are, goes down and around, and then you've got this other set of cables which also go around, and they go this conduit here, this plastic conduit, so it's relatively modern. Now keep an eye on the twisted cable and the single cable. So this I believe to be the twisted cable, which goes down to a socket, and then this cable, this junction box, I don't know anything about it, it's actually a plug socket. There is no other plug sockets in the room anywhere, no electrics, no plug sockets, that's it, aside from he says. So as you can see there's like a conduit there. Now this looks like the old wiring which is in the house, and I just want to point out again that that conduit, the big white plastic one there, runs through, so it probably goes to that socket. And then here we have the lights, extensions, a socket, a wire that goes through the wall. So everything's just dumped into this here, off here, and it goes round. Now I'll show you where it goes to. It goes to a junction box that goes to a plug socket, that goes to an ironing cable, down to another extension cable. The other extension cable goes down into the basement, and you can see that this has got the plastic conduit on. I put a bulb in here just so that we can die quietly, but you'll notice it gets a bit funny because there's no evidence that the conduit goes down, and yet the conduit runs here into this wall. So it goes all the way around the wall, all the way down, and it gets as full of mozzies down here. Gets to this point here. When I pulled the cables apart, I haven't tested them to see if there's any power there. You've got a junction in the middle of it for the lights, but I can't tell whether it's that grey cable underneath which seems to run parallel with it, so one or the other. and the grey cable goes up in the corner there. So it looks like there's a secondary cable. This extension is plugged into a blown light bulb, which is next to the basket, if you can actually see it. So that's that wiring. So as you can see, there is a conduit that comes up through this block of wood that goes into this wall that we can't tell where it goes to or from. But that would be the mains power cable that goes down into the basement. It could be here and then runs up inside the wall and runs across the room, because if you look, there's a wire that goes in there, so it's probably behind. Someone's obviously ripped this one apart. Alright, so now that we got through that, oh, smells lovely. In this tidy room, we have the end of the conduit, well, it looks a bit on this side, and then it's going through to another one, which is obviously the other side of the wall. I love the fact there was a diagonal wire there at some point, which is obviously attached to, well, I don't know what's going on there, but you've got the light switch. Is that a junction? Yeah, there's loads of tape there. It's a junction. So you've got mains power coming in. I don't know what actually goes through the wall at that point, but it comes down to a power socket and the light switch, which is quite common, and it goes over to this melted socket on the other side of the wall. So someone's just put a socket into a socket, or an extension lead. There's no other plugs or sockets in the room, but that looks like the conduit, and it's kind of in the right place, but you can see it goes past, which may just be because it's split for the two different sockets. And the room is full of cobwebs, more or less, again. Although I can't remember if I did all of this room, because I've not long uncovered and dug out the bed, and obviously the dead body. So there's a run through of the electrics. Lovely and dodgy. Can't really tell where it comes into the property or where the cable is that runs down into the basement. We really should consider isolating the wiring, because for all I know it could be this little tiny cable here that someone's bodged in somehow. So this is what I'm thinking. We come through, put the power in, consumer unit up on the wall, cable out, probably cable out this side as well, draw through both sides. I'll have as you may gather, back in the UK. So I thought I'd fill you in. So it appears that whatever power was coming into that summer kitchen was possibly on the cable at the front. Now the front cable, which I said is 2.5 at the front, was would have been what you would have thought would have been a normal cable to run out there. But it transpires from the mini kitchen setup, which you've probably seen on the other video, I pulled off a cable that was running down, which I thought was for the outside light, but that was actually feeding the whole of the summer kitchen. So it may be that there was a break in the live or neutral cable, and hence why, if you look around the top of the foyer in the summer kitchen, there was the conduit was exposed and the plaster was off. And you can see where someone had done the other wiring across the across that room. So I would imagine there was probably a short in that wiring anywhere along there in that socket and back through into that room. And what would actually have worked was that light switch that's going into the cellar door was actually a feed
plus the actual extension cables that were fed back through were feeding the missing wire that's broken. I didn't do an insulation test because when you touch these wires, you have a very high risk of causing a short. So what I didn't want to do is mess too much with the wires where I couldn't either cut off completely the circuit safely. So what the plan is now is probably a 3-day rewire in there, because it has to accommodate modern living rather than just lights and sockets. So you'd have a socket with a two power lines and then just a split in it for the light switches. So it's very basic rudimentary wiring, and very old. So everything's deteriorated. Even some of the modern-ish cables, which are probably about 40 years old, were cracking. Anyway, so I've lost some of the lights from actually touching it, and I've actually had to cut off quite a lot of power which went out to certain places, because simply it was just a fire risk. It's a fire risk and a safety risk. So everything's been put on a 10 amp fuse, with actually a 10 amp fuse rather than a bundle of wire inside it. And then it runs out to a modern 6 amp breaker. So it's very limited power that's in there at the moment. And obviously it's not good enough for what we would want to use it for eventually anyway. So it's having a full upgrade soon. I'll be sure to do the video on that one. That should be an interesting one of how to wire up a TNS system or TT system. And we're going to have to find a place to put an earth rod. Now there's a nice metal frame outside the front, but I don't think we're going to be able to use that as our earth, because there is actually no earth on any of the wires in there. So we'll be installing an earth, and we've got to install the off-grid system as well, or at least get ready for the off-grid system. So stay tuned. If you like the video, click like, and you can keep updated on roof work and wiring. So I'm going over shortly to do the rewiring. There'll be videos coming out now, usually on a Sunday. But yeah, that was just so you understood what was going on. So I didn't have a clue how this was wired up. And it turns out that it was borrowing a live or a neutral from somewhere else to work, and it was backfeeding through the extension cables and all sorts of fun things. But it actually worked, which was really surprising, because I actually had to untwist the wires, which were just down from the junction where the power was actually being fed into the whole of that side of the house, or the basement and the summer kitchen.